Welcome back to my channel. My name is Sabrina, and today we're making one of my family's favorite meals, cabbage dumplings and gravy. This recipe is delicious. It's a dumpling smothered in curry, a creamy sauce, flavored with garlic and ginger and onions and spices. Perfect for a special meal like a holiday, or really any day you just want a warming comfort dish. You're gonna love this one. So let's jump into the recipe. We're going to start by processing our cabbage. You only need about 2 cups of green cabbage, but we're going to finally shred them in a food processor. Honestly, I would double this recipe because you always have more sauce than you have the dumplings. So I would just take that whole head of cabbage and chop it down. Once you process it, this is what it looks like. Minced really nicely. Once you have your cabbage chopped up, then we're going to cook it down, add some seasonings, well, some aromatics to it anyway. So I'm going to be stir frying this in water. You can use oil. I'm trying to cut back on my oil a little bit, so I am stir frying it in just some hot water. So you see that I put in some onions and garlic. I have about a half of a medium onion and 2 cloves of garlic. Feel free to increase that if you like more garlic. It just adds more flavor than I usually do. So we're going to saute that until the onions become translucent, and then we're going to add some seasonings to this. So you'll see some cumin and coriander and some salt in there. And we're going to just put it right into the pan. It's important to season your onions and garlic first. That way every little kernel, every little morsel is covered in this seasoning, and that way when you add your liquids later, it'll permeate the whole thing. So we're just browning this up a little bit. You are going to see some of these bits will get on the bottom of the pan, and that is perfectly fine. No problem at all. Now let's add the cabbage. So on the bottom layer we have our onions and garlic and seasonings all added, and we cook that down, and now we're going to put our cabbage in and make sure we cook that down a little bit. I added about another 2 tablespoons or so of water just so that we can get those crunchy bits, those flavors off the bottom of the pan. You'll see that there's some brownness there, and that's coming from what's stuck on the bottom of the pan, which is the good tasty stuff, okay? You see, just scrape it right off the pan. It does not burn at all. You want that goodness to be part of your cabbage dumplings. So you can see the cabbage is starting to cook down. It's changing color a little bit, and when it's all cooked, you can put it in a bowl and let it cool down. This is our dumpling base. So you're not gonna be able to handle it right now. You see the steam coming off that, it's too hot, but we're gonna put it there and put it to the side. And as that cools, we can get started on our sauce. Okay, so we've shredded our cabbage, and now it's time to make our dumplings and make our sauce. This recipe has a lot going on, but I promise you it's worth it. So right now we're gonna be working on the sauce. Our sauce is going to have a number of things in here, but we're going to start with some onions and garlic and ginger, and we're going to saute that down, and the room will smell wonderful. I love the smell of freshly cooked ginger. To that, we're going to add a chopped tomato. We're going to add our aromatics, which will be curry and I think I have paprika, some salt in there. Then we're going to make it a little more liquidy, a little more of a gravy, because this is a dumpling and gravy. So we're going to add water to that, as well as a cup of coconut milk, and that will cream it up really nicely. And lastly, we're going to add our processed cashews. That is the trick. To make something thick and creamy and milky and a plant-based meal, it's probably going to be cashews. So I soaked some cashews for about an hour or so just to make them soft. I'm going to put them in the food processor for a couple seconds, blitz that up with a half a cup of water, and that will be the last thing I add to this sauce, and you're going to see that it will get creamier and creamier. Okay, we're all ready? Let's make some sauce. So again, we're going to start with a hot pan. Again, I'm using water, but you can use oil, any kind of oil, coconut oil, whatever. We're going to add to that some onions and cook those down a little bit. I think I used 1 small onion, and 2 cloves of garlic are going to be in here as well. You want to cook it down until it's translucent. Again, you want to be able to see through the onions. It's just cook them until they're soft, basically. A little bit of a pan fry. See how they change colors when you look at them? It's perfect. So there's our garlic. I used 2 cloves, maybe 3 cloves of garlic.
If you really love some garlic, you can use as many cloves as you'd like. Really, it's up to you. But 2 cloves seem to work just fine. If it starts to stick to the bottom of the pan, just add a little bit more water. You see that those delicious bits are going to come off right away. Even if it starts to turn brown or whatnot, you're not burning it. You're actually just getting those pieces off the bottom. You're going to add your seasonings. We have 2 teaspoons of curry powder, half a teaspoon of ground paprika. I have a teaspoon of ginger, minced ginger in there as well. I believe those are all the spices that I use. We want to make sure that we mix that up and coat every last piece of the onions like we did on the last one. A few extra ingredients in this one, but the sauce and the dumplings will go beautifully together because the flavors can marry. So you'll see that there's some bits on the bottom, and we're going to get that up very shortly with a little bit of water, so all the goodies and the flavors will come up. To this sauce, we're going to add a chopped tomato. That tomato is really going to give it a nice color. Those chunks of tomato are going to cook down so that it won't be necessarily chunky where you can bite and taste a whole tomato. They'll get nice and soft and almost melt into this gravy. I used 1 medium tomato, and I roughly chopped it so it had some big chunks. But I like it as it cooks down because you'll be able to see a little bit of the texture, but you won't taste big huge chunks of tomato. Look at that. Everything is coated with those delicious seasonings. The tomatoes are cooking down so they're kind of soft. You have plenty of goodies on the bottom, and we're going to get that up right now. I think I topped it off with a little bit of salt. Really, you want to salt it to taste. You don't want your food to be overly salty, but you want to taste it as it goes. Now for our liquids. We have 1 cup of water, which will help us get those goodies off the bottom again, and it'll further help mix all of the seasonings together. So this right here, this broth is pretty tasty if you just had this as a soup, but we're gonna continue to cook it down a bit and add our 1 cup of coconut milk, which will begin that creamy gravy process, okay? Coconut milk is a great way to thicken up things, if you're not using dairy. I am not really a big coconut fan, but I cook with coconut on a regular basis. And honestly, when you have something well seasoned, you don't get an overpowering coconut flavor, especially when it's curry, because curry is a mixture actually of multiple seasonings. And it can, kind of mask that coconut flavor so that you get the creaminess and the curriness without the coconut. But you're going to be able to see another way that we get that creaminess, and that is with our cashews. So I have about a 1/4 cup of cashews that I've soaked, and they get a little larger, so it looks like a little bit more. If you are nut free, just sub the cashews out for some chickpea flour, which is another way to really make something creamy. Also, that would be gluten free. You're going to add to the cashews a 1/2 cup of water, and we're going to blitz it in my NutriBullet. If you have a blender or a food processor, whatever that is, you just want to make sure that you blitz it or mix it until it's soft, okay, and creamy. You don't want any bits of cashews in there. If you have a high power blender, you can, but it's not even necessary because I only blitz this up for less than a minute, and look at the creaminess. Water and cashews, that is it. Now we are bubbling away back here with our sauce, which is the water and our coconut milk, and now we're going to add this thick cashew cream to the mixture, and watch this thicken up. If you could just smell the kitchen right now, I'm telling you, this gets creamier and creamier as you stir it and as you cook. It'll just start bubbling away, and I'm telling you, this sauce is absolutely fabulous. I also mentioned that it makes a lot of sauce. So the dumplings really only are a handful of dumplings with the recipe that I shared. So I would encourage you to double that recipe, or look at that. When you are done using it with the dumplings, you're gonna have a lot left over. This will be tasty over rice or over some pasta or over, some quinoa. This would just be a great sauce base for anything. But today it's for our dumplings. So let's get on the dumplings, okay? So we have our cooked cabbage and onions and garlic, and we are just adding a 1/4 cup of chickpea flour to it. You don't want it overly wet, you don't want it sopping and dripping wet, you want it just enough that it combines everything, and you're gonna test that with a little finger test very shortly. Just pinch them together and see if you can keep it together in a ball. And if not, you just add a little bit of water. I would say maybe 1 or 2 tablespoons at a time. Because again, you don't want it to be sopping wet. You just want it just enough to get that chickpea flour to be kind of like a paste and mix them together. There's no eggs needed, no other binders needed at all. Chickpea flour is a great way to get a binder without adding any dairy at all. So once it's very combined, you have no dry spots, you're just going to take about a tablespoon of mixture, put it in your hands, smash it together, roll it in a ball, and voila. And that's simple. That's all it is. A teaspoon of your dumpling mix, mash it together, roll it in a ball, make sure it's nice and firm, and it's finished. Dumplings are pretty easy. These things stay together very nicely once we put them in the oven. You'll find that you get about half a tray, and as I mentioned, I would double this, but this is what it looks like, and we're gonna pop it in the oven, 400 degrees for 25 minutes, and here they are. They brown up, you can flip them over a little bit, but they get nice and firm. So let's plate it up. It's time to put the two together. For me, I like to put it over a wonderful bed of rice. I use white rice, steamed rice, brown rice, whatever kind of rice you'd like, but I'm a saucy kind of gal, so I love sauce on top of my rice. So we're just adding it with our dumplings, and you just see the steam coming off that. This is a fabulous meal. All plant-based, nice and firm, but it tastes delicious. Top it off with a little parsley, that'd be cute, a little bit. Sprinkle, sprinkle, and the meal is done. Look at that. Absolutely delicious. I can't wait for you to try it. I encourage you to try it. Holidays are coming. Enjoy.